have worked with museums and colleagues here who work in libraries. So what we found out was, and I think that's quite obvious, that our colleagues from the libraries tend to have metrics and statistics and do evaluations working with audiences that are mainly online but not on-site. So one of the differences we identified is that talking about evaluation of the digital cultural heritage resources in museums, we're talking mainly about evaluating the experiences as well on-site and online. Okay. So what we found out while we were discussing this is that given the nature of these online audiences, it's quite natural to go to using metrics or statistics about, for example, how many people visited from this country, how many this month, etc., etc. One of the issues that we also identified was sometimes knowing just the what, but not the why, can be a little bit frustrating. For example, we found out that in one case, so the target group or audience is supposed to be people in Scotland, right? We had you have great audiences from China or the United States, but it's not possible really to know why. Another thing we discussed about was what to evaluate, and we found out, or we agreed, I think, that there's no single recipe there, and that it depends on what it is you want to evaluate, what's your target audience, and what's the experience as well you are targeting. We discussed quite a lot as well about the way different, let's say, the hierarchy or the organization, the infrastructure in a cultural heritage institution might actually have an impact on the ways evaluation is carried out, how much of it is carried out, and what kind of data can be gathered, how that can be analyzed. We also talked quite a lot about the gaps, current gaps. So there are quite a lot of things that we could see there. For example, it's a question of, or it can be a question of resources, time that may be available or not. Also, whether or not is kind of quite obvious that there is a need for doing this, carrying out evaluation and, well, then analyzing these findings and lessons learned. We also, I think, agreed on the fact that sometimes there is not a lot of maybe discussion about the different advantages and disadvantages that qualitative and quantitative methodologies may have. So that means that toolkits or frameworks that could better explain the value of evaluation and the different tools to proceed might be really valuable. And I think that's an issue you also raised about exchanging as well knowledge together with data, of course, among different institutions. Now, another question I think we discussed had to do with the different stakeholders of a project. So you're doing and carrying out evaluation, but what kind of data or findings is it that you share with your stakeholders? And these stakeholders, for example, are your fellow educators, or it could be the funders of your institution. Well, the data you would need to share or exchange would be quite different, or maybe the data would be the same, but the way you would communicate it would be quite different. Is there, I mean, I'm sure, but
so I guess we're at this table quite coming at the question from quite a sort of not having direct experience of carrying out evaluation, but wanting to learn more about different methods and processes. And so we're discussing a little bit about sort of tangential knowledge that we have from maybe previous projects, or just a slight kind of frustration about knowing what and how you can get that slightly more qualitative feedback without and the time resource that takes, and how it can be quite difficult then. And the creative aspect that you were just talking about was thinking about ways, for myself, thinking about ways for users to contribute that kind of feedback or evaluation of what you're creating for them in a way that allows you to better understand what I explained this much better when we were talking in the group. I'll give the example as I was talking of doing artistic workshops, and rather than using a feedback form, making the evaluation of what they were doing part of the process of creating the art. So there would be an area where during the artistic process they might feel something that they'd learned or were experiencing differently. They would contribute to a kind of collective artwork, as it were, whether it was through words or artistic pieces. And that was a kind of evaluation that allowed the workshop developer to understand how the people were artistically interacting with what they were teaching. But at the same time, that's not very useful data for a funder, for example, because it doesn't demonstrate the same types of things that a funder might be interested to know about, but it's good from a development point of view. So yeah, thinking of creative solutions and thinking of who it is you want the feedback for, who it is you want the evaluation for, I guess. Anyway, I'll hand this back.
Final word maybe that just came. We're discussing about the fact, yeah, that evaluation is not just, or should maybe not just be after a project has been launched or ended, but something that can be taken care of as well throughout the full life cycle of a project. By trying out to assess the needs, the risks, the resources to be committed, the advantages, and finding out about the experience. I mean, we're talking about evaluation, so the experience of the end user, but the user can be as well a cultural heritage professional dealing with digital cultural heritage resources as a mean or a way for education, for example. So yes, that's just another aspect of considering evaluation as something that can be, well, let's say, performed or taken care of, not just as we say for the front-end formative and summative evaluation, but yeah, throughout a longer, let's say, period from the beginning to the end. And that's us.